I sold the house on Birchwood Crescent the same week my doctor told me my knees would only get worse. 41 years I had lived in that house. My son was born while I owned it. My wife, Carol, died in the bedroom at the end of the hall. I knew every creak and every floorboard. And I sold it anyway, because my daughter asked me to, and because I thought that was what a good father did. My name is not important. What happened to me is I had worked for Canada Post for 33 years, starting as a letter carrier in Mississauga in the dead of winter, finishing as a depot supervisor. I retired at 62 with a defined benefit pension, about $2,400 a month after taxes, which in Ontario is not a fortune, but it is steady. It is reliable. I owned my home outright. I had savings of just over $91,000 sitting in a GIC at TD Bank. By any reasonable measure, I was not wealthy, but I was secure. Carol and I had built that security together, slowly, the way people used to, by spending less than we earned and never pretending otherwise. Carol passed 3 years before any of this happened. Ovarian cancer. She fought for 14 months and never once complained in a way that was meant to make anyone feel guilty. That was her character. After she was gone, the house felt enormous in the way that only a quiet house can feel enormous. I kept her reading chair by the window for almost a year before I finally moved it to the basement. And even then, I went down some mornings and just sat in it. My daughter, Rebecca, started calling more often after Carol died. She lived in Guelph with her husband, whose name is Darren, and their 2 children, a boy of 12 and a girl of 9. Rebecca had always been the more practical of my 2 children. My son lived out west, and we spoke at Christmas and birthdays, which was enough for both of us. Rebecca was the one who showed up. She brought casseroles. She helped me go through Carol's things when I was finally ready. I was grateful for her in a way I could not always put into words. It was Rebecca who first raised the idea of me selling the house. We were sitting at my kitchen table in November, the 2nd November after Carol died, and she said, "Dad, you're rattling around in there alone. The place needs a new roof. The driveway is a disaster. You're going to be 64 in the spring. Doesn't it make more sense to simplify?" I told her I would think about it. She came back to the subject at Christmas, then again in February. Each time, the conversation was a little more detailed. She and Darren had a finished basement, a proper one, with a separate entrance from the side of the house, a full bathroom, a kitchenette. She said I could have my own space. She said the grandchildren would love having me around. She said I could keep my pension, put my savings somewhere safe, and stop worrying about maintaining a property by myself. I want to be honest about something. I was lonely. That is the part that is difficult to admit, because men of my generation were not raised to say that word without flinching. But Carol had been my companion for 38 years, and the silence she left behind was a particular kind of weight. When Rebecca described Sunday dinners together and driving the grandchildren to hockey practice, I felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight for a long time. In April, I listed the house. It sold in 9 days for $487,000. After agent fees and land transfer adjustments and a small amount I owed in property taxes, I walked away with just under $471,000. Combined with my existing savings, I had approximately $562,000, plus my pension coming in every month. Rebecca and Darren had a mortgage on their house in Guelph. They had bought at what turned out to be not the best time, and Darren had gone through a period of reduced hours at his job in logistics. They were not in crisis, but they were stretched. Rebecca suggested that rather than me paying rent, which felt transactional, she said, like I was a stranger, I could contribute to the household by helping with the mortgage. She said $1,800 a month. She said it would cover my share of everything, food, utilities, the space I was using. I agreed. I want to be clear that I agreed freely. I transferred $1,800 every first of the month directly into their joint account. My pension covered that and left me roughly $600 for personal expenses, which was modest but manageable since I had my savings as a cushion. It felt like a fair arrangement, and for the first several months it was, in the ways that are easy to measure. I had my own entrance. I had my own bathroom. I set up a small woodworking bench in the corner of the basement near the utility room, which the children found fascinating in the way that children find anything mechanical fascinating. My grandson would come downstairs after school some days and watch me sand a piece of oak without saying a word, and those were genuinely good afternoons. The first sign that something was shifting came in the form of a comment Darren made at dinner in October, about 8 months after I had moved in. We were talking about nothing in particular, and he mentioned, almost as an aside, that property taxes in Guelph had gone up significantly, and that the furnace was making a sound it shouldn't be making. Then he looked at me across the table, not at Rebecca, at me and said, "Good thing we've got backup, right?" I did not respond to that. I stored it. In December, Rebecca asked if I could increase my monthly contribution to $2,200 because of the furnace repair. I agreed. The furnace did need repair. I had seen the invoice, so I told myself this was reasonable. I told myself I was a guest in their home, and these things happen. In February, she asked again. "Roof repairs," she said. A section above the garage had been leaking, and the estimate was significant. She asked if I could do $2,500 for 6 months. I said I would think about it. I said I needed to look at my numbers. She looked at me with an expression I had not seen on her face since she was a teenager being told no for the first time. And I felt the old parental reflex kick in the desire to smooth things over, to be the one who made the problem go away. I said yes. What I did not say, because I did not know how, was that $2,500 a month, plus my personal expenses, was now consuming my entire pension. Every dollar of my retirement income was leaving my account on a schedule that benefited their household. My savings were intact, but they were no longer untouched. I had moved $8,000 into my checking account over the winter to cover things I had not anticipated. Small things. A new winter coat, prescription costs that had increased, a birthday gift for my grandson that I did not want to be unable to afford. I started keeping a small notebook in the drawer of my nightstand. Not a diary. I am not a man who keeps a diary. Just numbers, dates, and amounts. I have always been organized that way. The habit of a man who sorted mail by postal code for 3 decades. I wrote down what I transferred, what I spent, what remained. Looking at it on paper had a clarifying effect. The situation changed completely on a Tuesday in March. I had come upstairs to use the main kitchen because the element on my kitchenette had been malfunctioning and I was heating soup on the stove. The door between the basement and the main floor was not fully closed. I had come through quickly and not pulled it shut behind me. From where I stood at the stove, I could hear Rebecca and Darren talking in the hallway near the front door, apparently just returned from somewhere. They did not know I was there. Darren said something about his brother, whose name is Craig, and money Craig apparently needed for a reason I did not catch. Then I heard Rebecca say, in a voice that was completely matter-of-fact, "The way you speak about logistics and not about your father. Don't worry about Craig. We can cover it. Dad's pension basically runs the house now. He's got savings on top of that. He doesn't need much. He barely goes anywhere." I stood at that stove with a pot of soup I no longer wanted, and I felt something settle in my chest that was not quite sadness and not quite anger. It was recognition, the kind that arrives slowly and then all at once. I did not say anything that evening. I ate my soup downstairs, and I opened my notebook, and I looked at the numbers again, as if they might have changed. They had not changed. What had changed was my understanding of what they meant. Over the following 2 weeks, I did something I should have done months earlier. I called my financial advisor at TD, a woman I had worked with since before Carol died, and I asked her to walk me through my full picture. I drove to the branch in person, and we sat down together, and I laid out everything what I had, what I was spending, what I had transferred. She did not say anything dramatic. She asked me a few careful questions. Then she said very quietly that in her professional opinion, I was drawing down my long-term security at a rate that would matter in 10 years, and that my living arrangement, as I had described it, was one she would want me to reconsider. I drove home from that meeting and sat in my car in the driveway for a long time. The situation moved faster after that, though not because of anything I did. In the last week of March, Rebecca told me that Darren's brother Craig was coming to stay for a few days. I said that was fine. It was their house. Craig arrived on a Friday evening. He was a few years younger than Darren, loud in the way some people are loud when they are performing comfort in a place that is not theirs. He took up space easily. The first night he was there, I could hear him and Darren laughing in the kitchen until past midnight. On the Saturday afternoon, I was downstairs at my workbench when I heard footsteps on the basement stairs. I assumed it was my grandson. It was not. It was Craig. He stood at the bottom of the stairs and looked around my space with the relaxed curiosity of a man who has never been told that some spaces are not his to examine. He saw the workbench and made a comment about it. Then he looked at me and said, with a kind of easy familiarity that I had not invited, "Rebecca says you're pretty comfortable. Smart move, selling in that market." I said I had done all right. He sat down on a stool I had not offered him and said that he was in a bit of a situation himself. He had been between contracts, he used that phrase, between contracts, and he had an opportunity he needed to move on quickly. Something involving a business he was starting with a friend, and he was short about $15,000. He said he wasn't asking for a gift. He said he would pay it back within a year, maybe sooner. He said Darren and Rebecca had spoken highly of how generous I had been with the family. I looked at him for a moment. Then I said, "Craig, I don't have $15,000 to lend to someone I've met once." He was not offended exactly. He shifted on the stool and said something about understanding, and he went back upstairs. Within an hour, I heard him and Darren talking behind the closed kitchen door. The tone was not happy. That evening at dinner, which I attended because it was a Sunday routine, Darren was quiet, and Rebecca would not quite meet my eyes. After Craig left on Monday, Rebecca came downstairs and sat across from me and said that Craig had been embarrassed by how I had spoken to him. I let her finish. Then I said that a man I had never met had come into my home, the space I was paying $2,500 a month to occupy, and asked me to lend him $15,000. I said I did not believe I had spoken to him badly. I said I had simply said no. Rebecca said, "He's family, Dad?" I said, "He's your husband's brother." That's not the same thing. She left without saying much else. What happened next is the part I have turned over in my mind more than any other. About a week later, I found out, not from Rebecca, but from an incidental comment my grandson made at breakfast, the way children accidentally reveal things, that Craig had apparently borrowed money from somewhere, and that Darren had helped sort it out. My grandson said this the way children repeat things they've half heard, without understanding the weight of it. I asked a casual question or two. The amounts were not specific, but the picture was clear enough. I went back to my notebook. I looked at the dates of the roof repair request. I looked at the increase to $2,500. I thought about the timing of Craig's visit, and the conversation I was not supposed to have heard in the hallway. I called my financial advisor the next morning. Over the following 3 weeks, I did everything methodically and without announcement. I am a man who spent 3 decades managing logistics, and I know how to work through a checklist without drawing attention. I contacted a real estate agent I had been referred to by a former colleague, someone who worked in the Guelph and Hamilton area, and who had experience with seniors looking to purchase smaller properties. I looked at 11 listings. I saw 4 of them in person. The third one I saw was a 1-bedroom condo in a low-rise building in Hamilton, 20 minutes from Guelph. 2nd floor, south-facing windows, a small balcony where I thought I might be able to keep a few plants in the summer. The building had a workshop room in the basement that residents could book, which I noted with some satisfaction. The asking price was $319,000. After negotiation, it went to $308,500. I had the funds. My financial advisor helped me structure the purchase so that my remaining savings were not unreasonably depleted, and my pension going forward would be entirely my own. I used a real estate lawyer. Everything went through proper channels. I was not in a hurry, but once I made the decision, I did not waver. I told Rebecca on a Sunday morning, 2 days before the closing date. I told her in the kitchen over coffee. I told her I had bought a condo in Hamilton, and that I would be moving at the end of the following week. I told her I had arranged for a small moving company to come on Friday morning, and that I would need the morning clear. She stared at me. She said, "Dad, what are you talking about? Where is this coming from?" I said it had been coming for a while. She asked if this was about Craig. I said Craig was one chapter of a longer book. She asked what that meant. I told her, as calmly as I could, that I had been contributing more than half my retirement income to her household for nearly a year, that I had heard what she said in the hallway in March, and that I had seen a financial advisor and understood clearly where things were heading. I told her I did not believe she had acted out of malice. I believed she had simply stopped thinking of me as a person with my own financial future, and had started thinking of me as a resource. She cried. I expected that. I did not move from my chair, and I did not change what I said. Darren came in partway through, and I told him the same things. He was quiet for a long time, and then he said that they had been counting on my contribution for the mortgage, and that I was putting them in a difficult position. I said I understood that, and that I was sorry for the short notice, and that I was still going. I moved on a Friday in late May. My grandson helped me carry boxes, because 12-year-old boys like to feel useful and I like to let them. He asked if he could visit my new place, and I said, of course, any time. He asked if I would set up a workbench there. I told him I was already looking into it. The building I moved into was quiet, in a way that Guelph had stopped being. I set up my kitchen first, because that is the practical thing to do. I put Carol's photograph on the shelf beside the window, where the light hits it in the afternoon. I went to sleep that first night with my pension in my own account, and no notebook full of transfers, and a feeling that I recognized, eventually, as relief. I want to say something to anyone watching this, who is in a situation that looks like mine looked, before I understood what it was. There is a particular kind of pressure that adult children can apply without ever raising their voice. It comes through appeals to family obligation. It comes through making you feel that contributing is what a good parent does, that asking questions is being difficult, that maintaining your own financial boundaries is somehow selfish. It does not arrive all at once. It arrives in small increments, a few $100s at a time, until the increments are so normal that nobody mentions them anymore. Your pension is yours. Your savings are yours. You earned them over decades of work, and they exist to protect your future, not to subsidize arrangements that benefit someone else more than they benefit you. Being a parent does not mean being a financial instrument. Loving your children does not mean giving them unlimited access to your retirement. I am 66 years old. I live in a condo in Hamilton with south-facing windows and access to a workshop in the basement. My pension arrives on the last Wednesday of every month, and every dollar of it is mine to decide about. I have coffee by myself in the mornings, and I find that I do not mind it. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude, and I have had time now to learn the difference. My daughter and I still speak. It took several months before either of us could have a conversation that didn't carry the weight of what had happened, but we are getting there. She has never directly acknowledged what I overheard in the hallway. I have not pressed her on it. Some things are understood without being said. My grandson visited last month, and we spent a Saturday afternoon in the workshop room. He is learning to use a hand plane. He has his grandmother's patience, which is the finest thing I can say about anyone. If you are watching this, and something in it sounds familiar, I want you to hear this clearly. It is not too late to make a different decision. Whatever you have already given, the money that is still yours is still yours. Protect it. Not out of selfishness, out of self-respect. There is no version of loving your family that requires you to disappear into it.